Hello, Fit Fam. This week's episode is going to be talking about children, and we have none other than our guest expert, pediatrician extraordinaire, Dr. Stacey Eadie. And she has been practicing for over 20 years and is a board certified pediatrician and a member of the American Academy of Pediatrics. So, little known thing, she is actually my twin. Yeah, you think you know everything about me, but Dr. Stacie is my twin. We have the same birthday. We were born a couple of years different, right?
Yes.
We're both in the same sorority. Our husbands have the same birthday themselves and are in the same fraternity. So we met, Stacie, when did we first meet?
I think it was 1993.
Yes, we interviewed for medical school together. Back then we went to the school, what was it called now? New York College of Osteopathic Medicine.
Yes.
And now it's called the New York Institute of Technology, College of Osteopathic Medicine, right?
Yeah.
So after we both graduated to medical school, she decided to venture to Michigan/Wayne State University to do her residency at Children's Hospital in Pediatrics. Now, before we get into talking to Dr. Eadie, today's hot topic is mental illness in not only the pediatric population, but in adults too. But since we're going to talk about pediatrics today, we're just going to talk about mental illness. So, Dr. Eadie, I'm seeing an increase in my teenagers going into my young adults coming in with anxiety, depression, psychosis. A lot of them are vaping and using marijuana. Now, I know I'm in New York, you are in Maryland. Are you noticing any similarities as to what I see?
Absolutely. Well, it's always been around that the kids have been, experiencing or experimenting with different types of substances. But yeah, I would say recently I'm getting an influx. And some of the patients, because I feel there's an increase in like anxiety and some depression, I like to put it with the pandemic, but we'll see later on as time goes what things we'll find out and how the pandemic, especially with the isolation, has affected the children of this generation. And I'm seeing it very young too. So not just the teens with the anxiety, a lot of anxiety I'm seeing even in very young children as well. And so I put that along with the social isolation for the 2 to 3 years and not being used to being around a lot of people. And then all of a sudden everything opened up and they were kind of dumped back into the world and having to figure some of that out. So I really look at them as being about 2 years behind or delayed in their social. Some have caught up, or they're always been social. So, they can kind of wing it, but they even have a little anxieties in there as well. So trying to figure out how to get them readjusted in life and feeling comfortable being around other people and not just on their tablets and phones and having the social isolation.
So now you mentioned anxiety in those who are not teenagers. So some parents might not be able to pick up on the things that you being an expert can pick up. So how might anxiety and or depression present in someone under the age of like 10 or 11 years old?
Well, sometimes it could just be kind of mood swings or not just crying. With some kids, they'll come into the office and you'll kind of see it. I even had a child the other day that mom was concerned about autism. The child, she's about 9 years old. And we, went through Kennedy Krieger, and Kennedy Krieger is one of the institutions here in Baltimore through Hopkins that evaluates children for autism. And she did the evaluation and all, and they came out with anxiety. And I knew she had anxiety, but they really did not find any autism.
Wow.
They are going to run some more testing, but it was just a lot of social anxiety and
Mm,
just anxiety in general. And, when they come in the office with me, the kind of things, they'll get very clingy with their parents.
mm,
They kind of shy away when you come to them, and things like that. And it for the parents, it is overwhelming, and they kind of know. I had another child just yesterday as well, same kind of things, just crying for no reason, and older,
mm.
and until the visit was over, it's almost like they just don't know how to express themselves. But there is it's the anxiety that's really kicking in, and it's a little just overwhelming for them. They know, hey, I'm here at the doctor.
Mhm,
I just switched over from, we were at home. You didn't prepare me for this.
mhm.
So a lot of times if the parents kind of prepare them in advance, kind of talk with them and let them know, we talked about this. We're going to the doctor. We're going to see Dr. Eadie. This is what's going to happen. This is what I think may not happen
Okay.
today, but we'll find out from Dr. Eadie what we'll be doing today. It gives a big difference when they come into the office. So you can do that in everyday life too, when they're going to school.
Mhm.
Today is a school day. This is how we're going to begin our day. And it kind of prepares them and brings some of that anxiety down. Yeah.
Okay. So as parents, we have to make sure that we're not only paying attention to ourselves, that we're also paying attention to any changes in behavior of our children, but then also realize that if they know they have to go to school or they have to go to the doctor's office, sometimes we need to give them a little prep as to what to look forward to. Because I remember, like, as my kids started to get earlier, well, later on in life, rather, and they knew we were going to the doctor's office, one of them would start like crying and the other one would be like, yay, shots. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what does this kid know about shots? But that was his way of talking about the vaccinations. And then when we get into the room, the one who was so excited about getting a vaccine, he would start like, give me his. And I'm pretty sure you know which one was which. Dr.
Yeah.
Stacie, who was doing what. And the other one would just sit there and cry as soon as he saw the needle. So, sort of by preparing to them as to what the process is going to look like, that sort of also eases down the anxiety. But I think a lot of times kids don't exactly express how they feel, but as their parent, we sort of have to pick up on those little subtle changes that maybe change when they're around certain people or when they go to school, when they have a good day, when they have a bad day. So I think that's all key. So my next topic is in real life. So I like to talk about so many things in real life, but it's in real life as to what's going on. So as far as in real life, I like to exercise. I know you love to exercise, Dr. Eadie. So can you tell me about how you have sort of like ramped up your game of exercising? Because you know me, I've been a personal trainer. I got the Fit Doc boot camps. Now we're doing like free Saturdays. But I know that you have been doing your thing, and I think it's important that people see that side of you because you got your white coat on. You don't have your stethoscope. I know you like my new stethoscope, right?
I definitely love that.
So now, what have you been doing that as far as your exercise routine that you can sort of translate that back into your office to share with your patients and their parents?
So for me, to be transparent, I'll say I always dipped and dabbed with exercise. Not always been consistent.
Mhm.
I used to dance in college. I used to always play a sport and everything when I was younger, always physically active in that way. And as I got older and life became life, and, you know,
Life was
some
life.
life was lifing, and I was just, you kind of get pulled here and pulled there, and you have kids, and
Mhm.
something has to give sometimes, and sometimes I'd find myself, I would be the one that had to give, and that meant that sometimes I would not keep up with my exercise
Mhm.
routines and things. I'd start off, and then as soon as stress hit, that might be the first thing to go, oh, I got to take this time for that, now I need to do this. But recently, I'll say almost a year, I'm going to check. I do have a personal trainer, and which I started out with, and she's wonderful. And the reason she's wonderful is because it's a whole experience. It's like a spiritual experience as well
Mhm.
for me. So not only do I go and feel physically different,
Mhm.
but when I leave mentally, I've left everything there.
Mhm.
And I do meet up on a routine basis with her. And the more she would train with me, and she kind of, I guess, picks up on your personality. My husband loves to work out, as Dr. Reed knows, and I would try and start with my husband, and it didn't work for me. you know my husband's like the drill sergeant with me, and I'm
Mhm.
like, no, like it didn't mix. So she has that perfect mix, and she doesn't push it too far but push it enough. And then she realizes, now I can take her anywhere. I can push her to limits. So it's now pleasurable in my mind. Now it's not like eating those green vegetables when you're younger and
Mhm.
you're like, yuck, yuck, I don't want to eat that. Now I'm like, oh, I want to do this. I feel different. I'm starting to change some of the habits of the eating habits and things like that, and I'm feeling different. I used to feel a little achy at times. You feel like your joints and certain foods you eat. I realized I can't do dairy, and I
Mhm.
realized that in the pandemic when I really cut back a lot
Mhm.
on dairy back then. And if I do take some dairy or
Mhm.
something that I'm not supposed to eat, I know I feel instantly just drained. And I
Mhm.
know I heard people say this before, and I'm like, oh, yeah, sure. But no, it is a feeling. I just thought I was tired, because I'm working all the time and running and all this. No, really, I have a lot more energy, and I have a regimen now. Get up early in the morning. I get up about 5 o'clock,
Mhm.
and I'll work out for an hour. I do about 30 minutes of cardio, and then I get in a little of my strength training as well. And I just do that on my own. And for me, just that little bit, but
Mhm.
every day, the consistency
Mhm.
has meant so much, just with the feel of my body, the excitement that I have and joy I have for myself, that I feel like I've achieved something.
Mhm.
And then my trainer, always, she gets all my workouts from my watch every day,
Mhm.
and she cheers me on, like,
Oh.
end of the race, she's there, you're doing so great, I'm so proud of you. So it's been great, and I feel bad if I ever miss out. If I go on vacation, I find a hotel that has a gym, and I work out as well.
All right, good. So that's great because consistency is the key for this. And for July, we have the 30 for 31. So everyone is supposed to be exercising at least for 30 minutes and for the 31 days of July. So that's my hashtag 30 for 31. So keep doing it because, like I said, you are inspiring other people to achieve by showing that you are being accountable to doing what you have to do for your health before you walk in the door of Peds in a Pod. So if you can just tell us, because I know you've had your private practice for over 15 years now, right?
Well, actually, it's been, yeah, this is not that quite that long, 12 years.
Oh, close enough. I can round up.
Well, I think process. Yeah,
Going
so
up. We're not going down. So I know what inspired you to become a doctor. Can you just let us know, as an audience as whole, what has inspired you to become a doctor? And then what made you determine to open your own office?
Okay. So my story, I'll take it back to when I was younger. So my mother passed when I was 6 years old of cancer, multiple myeloma. And for me, as 6 years old, I didn't quite understand, death. So for me, it was, oh, everyone say, oh, you're going to see her again. You're going to see her in heaven. And I'm like, oh, this wonderful place. I'm going to see her. And then you get a little older, you realize, like, oh, You're not going to see her. And so somewhere at around 7, 8, I was like, this is not what I want for mommies and children. Like children shouldn't be without their mommies. I want to be a doctor because I want to make sure that I can change the health of people in order to make sure that that connection is still there. And so as a young child, my experience really meant that, it really meant a lot to me and impacted me that way. But also, as I learned more about my birth, I was born with an omphalocele, and an omphalocele is like a huge herniation of your abdomen. And so not all of my intestines, but a large portion of my intestines were outside of my body when I was born. So since I was born, I won't say 19, what it is.
Okay.
Ultrasound back then, they weren't doing routine ultrasound. So my mom did not know of this complication, and they didn't know until I was born. And so when I heard of this story of how, my dad would always say, oh, you're a miracle baby. I didn't really understand that. But what happened was back then, only 1 in 8 children could survive that type of operation and just birthing of it. And so because they had no clue what was going on, that the child had it inside, they didn't have things prepared, had me at the right hospital, all of that. So once I learned about that as well, I'm like, wow, I love kids, I want to be a pediatrician, and so my dad fostered that. And as a young child, he always told me, like, well, if you're going to be a pediatrician, you should have your own office, and these kind of things were put in to my head as a very young child. And once I got older, I was like, okay, my pediatrician was an African American male. And so for me, it wasn't far-fetched that it was something that I could do because I saw someone who looked like me. So, moving on in life, I wanted to become a pediatrician. And so that's how I came to also having my own practice. However, I did do private practice. I was able to learn under another practice who had a private practice, and I would just watch and see how things were being done. And also I had a vision for what I wanted for my practice. And so as soon as I had an opportunity, I said, you know what, I think this is the time and I'm going to try this out. And so I also had lovely friends like Dr. Reed who had their own practice. And, I could also see that, hey, it's going to be work. Pediatrics is a little different as well. And you're going to have naysayers and things like that. But I said, I can do this. So
that's right.
So I did a solo practice.
Yes. And I know it hasn't been easy, having the solo practice. But at the same time, it almost seems like having your own practice was not enough for you. And I guess we're sort of similar, like our type A personalities, being twins that we are, that you decided to venture out into other projects. So you have the mentoring program that you have for young people who aspire to be doctors. And then you also, during COVID, started a podcast where you and another pediatrician were talking about topics that were relevant to parents and children. What made you decide to say, okay, you know what, I have my private practice. It's not enough for me. I'm already busy with my 2 children because your children were playing sports at the time and you were married, and that in itself is another job.
Yes.
What inspired you? Because we were both spiritual people. What said, okay, you know what, Dr. Stacie, this is not enough. There's something more that you should do.
So for the mentoring, I would say that's always been a part of my life. So even before it was like a platform, I would take myself back to even high school. We had like little sisters, big sisters. I went to an all-female high school. And so you always had someone you were always mentoring. So I kind of took that into college as well. And I also had, as we know, a couple of my friends were younger, Jamie, always took people in, to kind of mentor them because it's just very important important to make sure that, you know, if you have become successful, you're not successful unless you bring someone else along the way. So even when I moved here from Detroit from my residency, I started a mentoring program as well with one of my colleagues as well. Actually, one before then I did on my own, and then one I did with a colleague where we were mentoring young females in the Baltimore metropolitan area to give them, you know, more, I guess we could say, examples of professional women, how to learn to navigate amongst women, fostering positive relationships with women. We were teaching them things like that. And so with the medical school portion, it kind of fell in my lap because I was asked to do a talk at my college, at my alma mater, Lincoln University. And it started there for me just to talk with some students that were in the pre-med program, nursing, and it blossomed from there of, you know, oh, Dr. Eadie, can I have your phone number? And I'm like, yes, everybody just take my phone number down. And then I get all these phone calls, you know, because they had questions about how do I get into nursing school? How do I get into medical school? And I think by the second year that I did the talk, I was getting texts, so many texts, and I loved it. But I said, you know, there are so many of my colleagues out here who would love to have this opportunity to speak with, you know, people that are younger. And I knew that they could do the job. And I called on my colleagues, such as Dr. Reed, and everyone was so receptive and excited about it. And so we wound up having, I think, about 25 professionals. It started out, it was supposed to be like a pre-med thing. And then I get a call from a student and they said, well, I have a friend that wants to go to pharmacy school. Well, I have a friend go to dental school. I'm like, I know a dentist, I know a pharmacist. So I was like, okay, tell them to come on, send me the information. We'll add them to the program. And it was a lovely thing. COVID hit. And, you know, it was a lot going on at that time for the students. They were being displaced. We had students that were international that didn't know where they were even going to be living at the time. It was a very stressful time for the students and the physicians, because remember, and professionals, because everyone had something going on, right? And so that became, you know, one of the obstacles, I'd say. But so many have matriculated into their graduate schools. Awesome. I get texts, I get calls. They're in medical school. It's just wonderful. For me, it just keeps paying. But my only thing for each student is that if I help you, you have to help someone else.
Yes.
So that's my motto. And so, you know, I thank you again for hearing the call, taking the call, and helping out with that program as well.
No, as always. I mean, I really feel like service is something that we should all be doing, but it has to be within your parameters. And I remember I was talking to one of my friends and I was like, oh my gosh, I wish I could do this program, this program, this program. And he's like, don't you realize, like, the sheer fact that you have your own office and you allow students to rotate through the office. And whenever he said, I send you somebody who says they want to go and become a doctor, you're always there for them. He said, that's your way of serving your community. And I just pray that we all continue to be strong enough that we will continue to mentor those that are underneath us, because everybody needs a word of encouragement, especially nowadays with everything that's going on. And, you know, and I'm just going to segue into, I know as a pediatrician, being in private practice is not easy. You see a lot of different diseases and pathology that comes in, but what are, like, maybe the top 3 things that you see come into your office all the time, but you really wish that parents and children could work together to sort of resolve? For me, I'll just say one would be nutrition. Really, it's 2, nutrition and exercise. Because I remember when I started my not-for-profit, it started out because I was talking to a kid and I was like, yes, I was like, you know, make sure you eat this, this, and this. And we talked about exercise. And then he looked at me And he said, my mama don't exercise, so I don't know why I should. And you should see what she gives me to eat. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, shoot. That is true. So me talking to the child is one thing, but the parent needs to be also included in the conversation to make sure that the change happens. Because the kid he doesn't have a job, and he wasn't going out buying the food. It was the mother. So what are like 3 things that you see that you really want parents and children to work together to change?
Yeah, that was going to be on probably the top. One of the top would be obesity.
Mhm.
Nutrition is probably a best way to say it, because you can be thin and still not
Mhm.
be healthy.
Skinny fat.
So we talk about those things, and with that, the approach that I take is different for each child.
Mhm.
What I do is kind of allow the child, because as soon as we bring it up, the countenance changes. As soon as I say, well, I want to talk about, I want to talk about your weight, or I want to, talk about nutrition, because it's been brought up to them in such a negative
Mhm.
stigma. Some become tearful,
Mhm.
just to bring it up. And so my approach on it is to kind of incorporate the child. And I really don't ask, I don't care what age they are, they could be 8 or 9. I engage the child with it, because when they feel they have control of their nutrition and their life, they are more receptive, and it becomes more of a positive.
Mhm.
And so I'll ask them in the end, I let them come up with their initial regimen. And I say, would you like me to check back with you and see how you're doing? And they're like, yes, yes, I'm going to try.
Oh.
And I just do simple things. What do you like to do? Like everybody doesn't run, everybody doesn't like to play basketball. What is it that you like to do? I like to dance. Wonderful. So
Mhm.
you like TikTok videos. Pull those TikTok videos up. I need you to do a TikTok video start off with 15 minutes a day. I know they're going to do longer than that, but I start something very low, and they're doing it anyway,
Mhm.
sometimes, but now they're making their own regimen,
Mhm.
and then we talk about, well, tell me about the food you like to eat, and where do you eat, and when you eat fast food, are there other choices there that you can substitute? We don't have to, like recreate everything. We don't have to take everything away right away.
Mhm.
But how about we just change one thing? Can we change those fries to a salad, or, to the fruit? And they'll go, yeah, I could do that. I
They
do.
don't give you any pushback with that? Fries to a salad? Dr.
No,
Stacy, Dr. Stacy, come on now.
don't, because giving, you're giving them the option. You're saying, well, who like to go? I ask them where they like to go. They say Chick-fil-A, they go to McDonald's, they go to here. And so they'll tell me, like, well, this is what I ask them exactly, what do they get? They tell me what kind of drink, what size, everything. And I say, what in there can you switch? I'm not asking you to take everything away.
Mhm.
And I'm like, but make it realistic,
Mhm.
something you can do. And they'll say, yeah, I could do that. That's what they tell me. But those fries for me, I know those fries for me are
But wait a second. I'm gonna get back to your third thing. But did I send you that video of the little kid and his parents had switched his meal and put his chicken nuggets in a McDonald's Happy Meal box and put some
hard.
homemade fries? And the little boy starts eating it. And then he's like, okay. He's like looking at the chicken nuggets and he's like, and then he put it aside and then he pulled out the French fry. He looked at the French fry. He's like, But he realized the difference. And
Right.
he didn't say anything. He just had the camera in front of him.
But that was different, because the mother did that. The child didn't do. You see what I'm saying? You have to give them, you have to
The
give the
option.
autonomy of making the choice. When you do it, then you violate it. So, so that is just to the parent to try that. Very good, but
That was
they're very
funny.
smart.
All right. So go ahead. What's your third thing then?
So, I would say say nutrition and obesity as well. I One thing I do have for parents that if I had time to talk about it, and it really doesn't have to do with the kids,
Mhm.
is we have different, I guess, situations, social situations with families. You know, we have some single moms, we have some married parents. But
Mhm.
if you're in a relationship of being separated,
Mhm.
not to make the doctor's visit about you guys not being together, because
Mm.
it's not, we don't have lawyers, you know, at the
Mhm.
doctor's office. And it makes it very strenuous for the kids when they come in,
Mhm.
because sometimes, you know, it becomes a pitting one against the other. And,
Mhm.
you know, it becomes a whole situation. And about the health, where we're not really addressing the health, we're really needing to manage some other things outside,
Mhm.
which we don't do that, you know, in the doctor's office.
Mhm. Mhm.
So if I could say something that would help children, that's something that would help a lot. And it becomes a big struggle, you know, at the office with the kids as well. Uh, Other things with is still going back to the mental health.
Mhm.
For parents, that stigma of mental health, to let it go.
Mhm.
Like, now we need to start to move on and say that we all could speak with someone. So
Mhm.
it's not a bad thing if your child needs to speak with
Mhm.
someone, and make it a positive thing.
Mhm.
Don't make it a negative thing, because there are a lot of kids that are suffering
Mhm.
right now. And so that, and vaccinations. So
So now when we talk about vaccinations, because you brought it up, not me, um, what do you do when parents come in, they themselves receive their vaccines, but they don't really feel that their children should receive all the childhood vaccines that they should receive? And, you know, throw COVID into the mix.
mhm,
Well, I didn't get COVID, so I don't think that my kid need to get COVID vaccine.
mhm.
How do you sort of reinforce the importance of preventing future diseases with your child? So by vaccinating, this is the purpose. Like, what do you say to somebody who that is their mentality and the child is right there in the room with them?
Mhm. Well, I approach it very gently, because you know, it is something that they have their own choice to be able to do. I'll give one example. I learned very early on, when I worked in the other office, my earlier years, maybe the first 3 or 4 years of me practicing pediatrics,
Mhm.
I had a family who refuse shots.
Mm.
And it probably wasn't as prevalent then as it is now.
Mhm.
And I said, okay. They were very adamant that they did not want shots. My job as a pediatrician is to educate you. So
Mhm.
I just like to know why not, you know,
Mhm.
so that I can dispel any myths or whatever. I respected their decisions.
Mhm.
And one of their reasons, main reasons, was because they did not want their child to get autism.
Okay.
And so, you know, I do my education every time they brought the child in. And as time went on, autism usually shows up at about 15, 18 months is the earliest, about when the child has a chance to show enough social
Mhm.
skills to pick that up.
Okay.
And she was starting to show some signs of
Okay.
autism. And so as time went on, you know, not much time, you
Mhm.
know, I was nudging to say, hey, you know, we need to refer and have this child evaluated,
Mhm.
because they're looking like they have some signs of autism.
Okay.
And at that time, I knew that this is more than likely 90% is autism.
Mm.
And my lesson at that time was never push, because those parents would have sworn, had I, you know, some kind of way without them wanting to do it,
Mhm.
really had pushed enough that they did it, and out of not
Mhm.
that they would have done it out of their own will, but
Mhm.
they would have definitely said, no doubt, I knew I shouldn't have done it. My daughter now is autistic. And you know, they could not, it actually unfolded that way.
Wow.
And I expressed that to them. I told them, I said, I'm so happy that you did not wind up getting the vaccines,
Mhm.
because you really inside would have never felt good with yourself
Mhm.
that it was not the vaccine. You would have said, I knew I shouldn't have done it, or
Mhm.
whatever. And the child wound up having autism, still does. She's older now. She's probably
Wow.
about beautiful young lady.
Mhm.
And we were able to get her the services that she needed,
Mhm.
because it's always, great to find out earlier so that we
Mhm.
can get them as close to their peers. And they're the most gifted kids in the
Mhm.
world.
Yes.
Autistic patients, they actually have so many gifts,
Mhm.
and just learning what those gifts are,
Mhm.
and being able to, just like any child that's athletic or
Mhm.
someone who loves art, we just
Mhm.
like to love on those gifts, and just have them have good self-esteem about
Mhm.
themselves as well. She's
That's
a lovely young lady now.
wow.
So that was my story about vaccines. So I don't push, but I love to educate. And
Mhm.
I'm going to say that probably about 40%, I don't know, because I don't kind of record it. I
Mhm.
want to say, after a while, and I've educated enough, maybe about 30-40% of my patients wind up getting the vaccines, because each time they come, I explain to them. I try
Mhm.
and will bring dad in so he can tell me what it is. And most times they haven't read up on anything. They're going on something they viewed
Mhm.
online,
On social media.
on social media, or on the internet. It's not something they really know. And
Mhm.
I have them talk to me about it, and we have long conversations, and the parents go, yeah, because I said, you have these vaccines, right?
Mhm.
And we just have really normal conversations about it. And also another thing is, I tell them this, like, your child won't be able to travel the world, like, this is just the United States, and I don't know what's going to happen in a couple years, in a decade or so. Are we going to have an increase in these diseases? But certain
Mhm.
places you will not visit if
That's
you don't
right.
get these vaccines. So, unless you're going to make this 20-year-old get all these shots when they're ready to go abroad, and they're not going to want to do that, all those
Mhm.
shots at one time.
Right.
And also, are you going to homeschool? Because the public schools are not, or not even the private schools, most are not going to take you
Mhm.
without your vaccine. So be prepared. I tell them early, be prepared to homeschool,
Mhm.
because they're going, or now you put me in a bad position, because now you want me to give all these shots at 4 years old. And now they
Mm-mm.
hate me every time they come back.
That's right.
Remember when they were
Because they're not all gonna be like my twin, like shut, shut, shut.
now,
No,
I'm
but that's the other thing. Like we have to make sure that we realize, like the children aren't robots; they're human beings, and at a certain point, they're listening and they see, and then they're gonna repeat what they hear. So we have to really be careful that we are sharing healthy habits with them. And if it's important to get vaccinated, we need to make sure that we follow through as parents and we make sure that we ourselves are vaccinated. Because what's the point of our children being vaccinated and us not being vaccinated and getting exposed to someone who had like measles, mumps, rubella, and then having a bad outcome, which could eventually lead to death? So, education is so key. That is really key. And now, I mean, I keep looking behind you, Dr. Stacie. I see that you have a nice banner up,
yeah.
lovely picture of you. It says maternal instinct. So we know what peas in a pod is. Now, what is maternal instinct?
Well, I am a soon to be author, self publisher, um, of Maternal Instinct, my first book, Raising Black Sons to Thrive. So, this has been a project like everything else, as I mentioned, all these other things that have been going on in my life. I'm going to say, since my son is now 20, I started this journey when he was about 13.
Mm.
And it started out, Dr. Reed and I had gone to a book writers boot camp. And I was like, I do want to write a book. I want to write a book one day. But what would I write about? And it was just lovely that we went with some very prominent authors and leaders in the writing world. And they were able to massage my thought process on, what would you write about? What are you passionate about? And that is where it all began. And I started off with a panel discussion on it. And I just wanted to see, because I knew I had been going through this feeling, and why it was passionate for me was because my firstborn child, being a male, is my firstborn. And when I was pregnant with him, I was so excited because, my husband and I had decided, hey, this is the time and we're ready. And then I found out, oh, it's a boy. I found out early. I wasn't sure if I wanted to know what it was at first. And then I'm like, no, you can't tell him and not tell me. So we found out it was a boy. And I was so excited. My parents had a boy first. And I said, this is lovely. And then I started to have a little, thoughts about what's going to happen when this male comes into the world. And I was starting to get these fears and anxiety because of the things that happen in our society with Black males. And I was like, oh, I just found myself being over vigilant of everything. It could be just something like education or, his interactions with people, or what about when he becomes a teen, and, what may he encounter, and what do I need to do to align him? And Michele knows this, Dr. Reed knows this, because we went to medical school, and we know when we look to the left and right, it was mostly us, right? Females, right? And I'm like, wow, where are the males? Like, it's not many, it's a handful. What happened? I went to school with brilliant Black males. What happened to them? What was their story? I wanted to know, because like I said, I went to an all-female high school, so there was a gap, And so that was my passion for writing it, because as I started to talk with other Black females, other mothers, especially of male sons, I realized that they were too having these same thoughts. And I'm like, really? You worry about this? I thought it was me. I thought it was just me, because no one's ever had this conversation with me.
But let me ask you a question though. When you were pregnant, that was during residency, right?
Yeah.
And you were in Detroit.
Yes.
And that's equivalent to being like in the inner city.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So were there certain things that you were exposed to in the hospital that might have maybe more so sort of triggered how you were feeling and what you were thinking?
The hospital, I'm going to think at Children's, somewhat, yes. But no, I probably saw more in New York as a student.
Okay, just throw us out under the bus. Okay.
I think I did my surgery residency at Brookdale. That probably those were more memories of things like that. Yes, that did gunshot.
But that was still medical school. So medical school residency.
Yeah.
So
yeah, those it did. But you'll see as you read the book, I had some very personal things that led this inner anxiety that I didn't know about. And so in the book, I will unravel, because writing the book was when I received my therapy. I didn't know all these things were in there, because we've just been moving through life from school to residency to now children and moving to another state. And, you just pack things on and you keep moving. You're like, okay, I can't wallow in this. I got to keep moving. And it wasn't until I had to ask the hard questions. Why are you so stressed? And I had to unpeel a lot of personal things. And in the book, I'm going to unveil those things. And also I'll talk about different topics that were important and dear to me: injustice, education, brotherhood, things like that. And I'll come up with some strategies as well within the book for mothers of young sons, that they can try and come along with a path of what they might be able to make their own unique path, but give them just a little foundation, just as they're starting to raise their sons. So I use my professional and I use my personal experience as a mother to give my maternal instinct about raising Black sons.
Yes. So I feel like I was part of the pregnancy. So I have to just do a disclaimer. So even though we're twins, I do not know the full content. I'm just doing my little disclaimer. I do not know the full content. So it's going to be just as much a surprise to me as it is to the audience when the book comes out. And as soon as we get the information as to when the release is coming, because it's coming, because pretty soon we're going to have to make sure, like, we got the book side by side, twin one, twin two. You could be twin one. I'm twin two. But, you know, I was part of the whole, I feel like the birthing process.
Yes.
Because I think it's important that we talk about our families. I think it's very important that we talk about our children. And especially with everything that is going on now. And I mean, we've even touched on it a little bit with the Supreme Court settlements that have just come out with affirmative action. So Stacie and I, Dr. Stacie and I, when we went to medical school, we were part of an initiative to get more minorities into medical school. And our class had about 50 Blacks and Hispanics that were in our entering class of medical school. And we were known in New York State as having the most amount of Blacks and Hispanics in a medical school throughout New York State. And that was upstate, downstate, and Long Island. But as time has passed, that sort of dwindled down. And Stacie and I, Dr. Stacie and I, have continued. And sorry, I'm calling you Dr. Stacie because I'm so used to Stacie, but Dr. Stacie and I have sort of tried to still be active in our medical school because it's so important for us to give back, but it's also so important because research has shown that if you are treated, especially as a Black person, by a Black doctor, your health outcomes are so much better as far as your compliance, you taking medication, decreased hospitalization, but then also just living longer. And that's documented research that came out in around Easter time this past year. So for us to go back to our medical school, sometimes there might be 2, there might be 3 in the medical school class, but representation does matter. It makes an important step in making sure that as a whole, not just a community is healthy, but as a society and as the United States, that it's going to continue to be healthy and stronger. So my prayer is that we can continue, Dr. Stacie, to inspire our young people to go into the medical field, but also that schools will give them the fair chance and the opportunity of not only applying to medical school, because that also costs money, but getting accepted to the medical school and completing the medical school. And I think that's huge. Yes, it is costly to go to medical school. Unfortunately, in the United States, there are only a few schools as far as medical schools that have free tuition, but somehow we have to make sure, but there are scholarships out there. I think I had the National Health Service Corps scholarship. So I went to family medicine and I agreed to work in an underserved area, but there are other scholarships out there for our young people to apply to. So if you achieve to be a physician, just like Dr. Stacey Eadie or your child is, you know, please feel free to reach out to us because we are here for you. We really want to make sure that we see the change, that it's not just about us. It's about our children. It's about our grandchildren, which should not be a thought right now for our kids. Right?
Right.
But it's a future thought down the road. But
Yeah.
it's about providing a better future for all of us. So Dr. Stacie, I know I've known you for umpteen thousand years because, like I said, you are my twin. But what is one thing that maybe I know, but not everybody knows, or maybe I don't even know about you?
About me? Something that, okay, fun fact. Is that what this is?
That's right. Fun fact.
Fun
Don't
fact.
make it corny either.
You said about who? So, fun fact about me is that I attended school with Tupac Shakur,
Hmm.
middle school, 8th grade. And so that's my fun fact. We were in the same school at the same time in Baltimore, Roland Park Middle School. So that's a fun fact.
Oh, wow. I like Tupac too. I never knew that.
Yeah, remember, we were at your mother's home when we found out when he was killed. Remember that?
Yeah,
Uh,
that's true. That
that-
is true. And they're still having ongoing things trying to find out about who actually murdered him. So praying eventually that comes to closure. Yes. So, Dr. Eadie, we're going to post how people can get in contact with you, but if you could just let us know the best way to reach you and your practice, because you are in Maryland, you're open to new patients, right?
Yes, we still are accepting. We are a little ways out, but yes, we are accepting new patients.
So, if you can just give us the best way to reach you on social media, you or your practice.
Okay.
And if you want to say the phone number for your practice, that's fine, because we're also going to share it in our comments section.
Okay, great. Well, I am Dr. Stacey Eadie. I'm located in the Baltimore metropolitan area. The name of my practice is PEDS, P-E-D-S, in a Pod Pediatrics, LLC. We have a website, which is www.pedsinapod.net. We can be found on both IG and Facebook. As PEDS in a Pod Pediatrics LLC. Also, let's see, our phone number is 410-285-5437. If you go to the website and you would like to become a new patient, there is a section, a tab that you can push that says new patient. And if you fill out those forms that are there, all of them, someone will contact you. You can always call the office as well. And for Maternal Instinct, please look out for that in the next few weeks. It should be uploaded on Amazon. You can find that book, Maternal Instinct, the book, on IG, and just Maternal Instinct 16, I believe it is, on Facebook, but it may just be Maternal Instinct. I have to
All
see.
right. So we'll make sure we share that. And I mean, Dr. Eadie, thank you so much for being a part of the Fit Doc Michele Reed podcast. We talked about so many things today. And I think one of the key things is just to make sure that our children stay safe and healthy. And thank you so much for sharing information about how to parent, not to be a better parent, but how to parent in general, and the importance of us as physicians modeling to our patients and their parents about the importance of exercise. Because we talk the talk, but we're actually doing it, because the way I see it, when you look good, you feel good. When you feel good, you look even better and you become so productive. So thank you so much, Dr. Eadie. Thank you to our audience for tuning in. And as always, stay safe.